The restaurant was too quiet for what he had just said. "Double the wedding budget," Mark said, leaning back in his chair like a man issuing a business order. "Or we call the whole thing off." The words hung in the air between us. I watched him calmly, studied the confidence in his face, the certainty that I would bend. For a moment I said nothing, just listened to the soft clink of glasses around us and the distant hum of conversations that had nothing to do with the small war unfolding at our table. Then I nodded once. "Okay," I said. Mark smiled. The smug kind. The kind that assumes victory before the game even starts. But he misunderstood my answer. Because when I said okay, I meant the wedding was over, not the budget. I met Mark 3 years earlier at a networking event for small business owners. He had charm, that effortless confidence that makes people lean closer when he talks. At the time, I admired it. I thought it meant ambition. We talked for hours that night. About goals, money, building something meaningful. Back then, he said he admired my discipline, my independence. "You're not like other women," he told me once, smiling across a late dinner. I believed him. We built a life slowly. Weekend trips, late-night conversations about the future. Eventually a ring. Our wedding fund grew quietly over time. We both contributed. Careful deposits into a shared account meant for the celebration. At least that's what I believed. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. Mark started talking less about us and more about appearances. The venue had to be bigger. The guest list had to be longer. His friends needed to be impressed. At first, I thought it was normal wedding stress. Then the numbers started changing. Prices doubled. New requirements appeared. Luxury details that didn't make sense. I asked questions. He gave vague answers. And that's when I started paying attention. The first real crack appeared on a quiet Tuesday night. Mark left his phone on the kitchen counter while he stepped outside to take a call. A message popped up. Not romantic. Not dramatic. Just careless. "Don't worry. Once the wedding happens, the investment comes through." My father already approved the plan. I stared at the screen. My stomach didn't drop. It went cold. Later that night, while Mark slept beside me, I opened the laptop and looked deeper into the financial documents he had been handling. It didn't take long to understand. The expanded wedding budget wasn't for a wedding. It was collateral. Mark's father wanted him to prove he could raise capital for a risky real estate deal. My money, our wedding fund. That was the demonstration. They weren't planning a marriage. They were planning an investment using me as the silent partner. Without my knowledge. Without my permission. That's when the anger arrived. But it wasn't loud. It was quiet. Focused. Cold. The next morning, Mark gave me his ultimatum over dinner. "Double the wedding budget," he said, tapping his fingers against the table. "Or it's off." He expected tears. Negotiation. Desperation. Instead, he got a calm nod. "Okay." That night, I transferred every cent of the wedding fund into my business account. Legally, it was mine. Most of the deposits had come from my earnings. The paperwork was clear. Mark never noticed. Why would he? He assumed the money was waiting exactly where he left it. My business had been growing slowly for years. A consulting firm focused on logistics optimization for small manufacturers. Steady work. Careful growth. The wedding fund changed everything. I invested it immediately. Hired 2 experienced analysts. Expanded marketing. Took on larger clients I had previously turned down. The risk was calculated. The timing was perfect. Within 3 months, revenue doubled. Within 6 months, it tripled. And Mark? I hadn't heard from him once after our breakup. Until the phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. I answered. "Hello?" A deep voice responded. "This is Richard Caldwell." Mark's father. Of course it was. I leaned back in my chair, staring out the window of my office. The city moved quietly below. "What can I do for you?" I asked. There was a pause. "I'm calling about the wedding fund," he said carefully. "Mark mentioned you were responsible for managing it." Interesting. He still believed the money existed. I was, I replied calmly. And I invested it. Another pause. Longer this time. "That money was meant for a joint venture," he said. "No," I corrected gently. "It was meant for a wedding." Silence. Then his tone hardened. "We expected you to cooperate." I smiled. "I did cooperate," I said. "Just not with your plan." 2 days later, Mark showed up at my office. He looked different. Not confident. Not relaxed. Nervous. You moved the money, he said the moment he stepped inside. Yes. You had no right. I slid a folder across the desk toward him. Inside were the account records, deposit histories, legal ownership documents, every number clear, every signature mine. He flipped through the pages, his face tightening. That deal collapsed because of you, he said quietly. I leaned forward slightly. No, I said. It collapsed because you tried to gamble with someone else's money. His jaw clenched. You ruined my opportunity. I held his gaze. No, I repeated calmly. You ruined your own. When he finally left, the office felt lighter. Outside, the sun reflected off the glass towers across the street. 6 months earlier, I had been planning a wedding. Now my company was 3 times its original size. New clients, new team, new future. Mark thought he had issued an ultimatum. But what he really gave me was clarity. Sometimes revenge isn't loud. Sometimes it's just a quiet decision, and the patience to let success deliver the final message.